Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Reactive Attachments, the podcast. My name is Taylor, and I am rambling on for an hour today. I wanted to really quick just kind of talk about vulnerability and, showing your emotions when you are on high alert in your own house with your kids and you feel like you can't show emotion because you're dealing with a reactive attachment disorder or attachment disorder child, and what that's like and why it's important and my experience with that. So I'm going to hop right in. It is still in the midst of the coronavirus known as COVID-19, and we are coming off a lockdown. Today is May 2nd. I think it's Saturday. And so we've had kind of a lot of time stuck in the house with our kids, and we are losing our minds, etc., etc. So let's talk about things like, say you are going through the emotions of losing your job, your finances are, stressful right now, you're emotional. Let's say you've lost a parent yourself recently, you're grieving or something along those lines. And you keep noticing that you're having a hard time showing emotion. You feel like you have to hold it back when you're interacting with your child, especially the one, of course, that has an attachment disorder or is, in fact, a reactive attachment disorder diagnosed child. So what does that feel like? I mean, why do we feel that way? If we're maybe not cognitively aware of it right off, like you don't realize that when you're interacting with this child that you're having to put on the front. And that's hard because during times like these, I mean, not that we have a whole lot of resources to look back on to compare notes here, but in general, anytime there's something massively emotional that happens or tragic that happens in a family, most of the time you're going to find that the most interactive parent, so usually the nurturing enemy, which is typically the mom, that is interacting with the child on a day-to-day basis, is going to feel extremely restrained and censored, and just like they cannot express themselves how they're really feeling. You don't want to cry in front of the child. You don't want to show any weakness. And like I said, you may not cognitively be aware of that. Let me give an example of, now, yes, I was aware of it. Now, again, my story goes back many, many years, a decade and a half of dealing with a reactive attachment disorder child with an awareness that that's what I was dealing with. So for me, it was a different scenario altogether. But ultimately, what I'm talking about is the same whether you have the awareness or not. So my mom passed away, destroyed my life for years, for like the last couple of years. I was really, really, really struggling in my life. Like just, we lost everything financially, moving back and forth across the country. We just had a really hard time, and my mom's passing was very unexpected, very sudden. And we didn't have, we weren't actively in-home raising our goddaughter at the time. So my mom passed in 2016, and we didn't take her back in until 2017. Actually, it was like right around the 1-year anniversary of my mom passing. So we, for example, like on the 1-year anniversary of her passing, I'm trying to remember if it was that. Yeah, it was a 1-year anniversary. So it was in August, and we went to like put flowers on her grave, etc. And we just had to send, I think she was 13 at the time, I feel. We had to send her off with like some headphones and an iPhone or something to go listen to music. And when that, like this is extremely emotional. My brother's there, my wife is there, we're crying, we're, like doing like a little ritual, writing notes and putting them in this box, and just really emotional. Like I think my wife, I think she worked like a half day that day. It was just really stressful. So, but we're showing there's this huge outpouring of emotion from all three of us. She knew ahead of time. I talked to her about it. Like, hey, if you're not going to be in an appropriate emotional state. That's okay. You don't have to feel any feelings about this, but you need to be respectful of those of us who are, really going through it right now. So I need you to just go walk around, go, sit in the car, do whatever you need to do, but just kind of stay away. Let us have this moment, whatever. And I don't remember if it was like a service issue or something on the phone, but like middle of our little moment where we're talking about whatever it was and we're writing our notes, crying, etc. She like comes back up and she's like, hey, will you blah, 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 will you fix this? And it's not a big deal. A lot of teenagers may respond, teenagers are entitled. They're just selfish individuals. That's what they're supposed to do in their developmental stages of teenage years. Like they're supposed to be completely self-centered and self-involved. So, but it's different with a rad kid because they tend to take those emotions and that weakness in that moment and exploit it or capitalize on it in a way that is counterintuitive. You know what I mean? So a normal child, and I hate to say normal, what do they say? Neuro, I don't remember how they say it. But basically a regular person that doesn't have this disconnect would at least be able to read the room a little better. So she has to, and a lot of it is just her actually wanting to read the room and know, like, what can she get away with in this moment. So she like comes back and she's like, hey, I think your phone locked or something. I can't get into it. I can't get back to it. I just wanted to change the video or the song. And I was like, put it on a playlist and go. I need you to not continuously burden me with these like silly little requests. So, but you can see her watching with like her eyes, like she's reading my brother, she's reading my wife, she's, made up a reason to come back over there and kind of just get a feel for what was going on. And I just have to, in those moments, call her out and say, I'm not going to ask you again. If you don't pull yourself out of this moment and do what's appropriate, you're going to go sit in the car until we're done. So, and for my child, that is the last thing she wants to do is be stuck in a car when she could be walking around outside with very little supervision for that 15 minutes of time. So, she never remembered, so she and I have talked about that moment. She barely remembers it, but all she remembers from that moment is that she had opened Google to try to go to like a private window or something, and then my phone locked. So like even in that moment, you see what I'm saying? She's looking for a way to, just exploit the weakness, the vulnerability that's being shown. She knows that I'm distracted. She knows that I'm trying to, feel my own feelings and moderate all three of the humans around me, her, my wife, my brother. Like I'm trying to lead this moment, and, she just wants to take full advantage of it. So, and I have a million other examples like that, but this was such a devastation, losing my mom, and she knew how upset we were and how important it was, because we hadn't really been to the grave since the funeral, and it was just, we had just moved back and I kept putting it off. So anyway, long story short, the whole point of this is to just say she had a full awareness of literally exactly what I was going through and how important this moment was. She was with us when we went to go get flowers, etc. And it's just unfortunate that in these moments we have to kind of compartmentalize our feelings and our interaction with our child. We can't just express grief in a natural and organic way. And that's really, really devastating, because I believe, and this is kind of like a whole different, let me get off on a different topic have a tangent here. I believe that grieving in our society is way, way, way under discussed. It is something that, when you have these really significant losses, you lose a parent, you lose a child, a spouse, something very significant. And we all know people that have grieved. We all know people that have had losses. And even say many of us have had significant losses, a grandparent, an uncle, maybe a cousin or something, a neighbor. But when you lose one of the integral people in your life, I mean, it really changes the fabric of who you are. The grieving process is so important because it maps out a lot of emotional tracks that you're going to eventually be on if you don't feel your feelings appropriately and you're not managing the process of grief. And I don't believe in the 5 stages of grief, but just the process of grief in general. And that could, and that goes for things like divorce as well. I mean, whereas I don't think that, like, if you're living your best life and your husband suddenly passes away or your wife suddenly passes away, I don't think that I think that is definitely more devastating than divorce, I would say. However, divorce is in that same category as far as on the scale of emotional turmoil and trauma. It is up there. I mean, it is. I want to say, like, I remember from years ago, there was like a life, like a life trauma scale. And I think divorce, death, moving, and career, loss of career, maybe, or like, maybe it's not, maybe loss of career isn't up there, but it's definitely moving, divorce, and death are all at the very top of the list of emotional traumas. And so you have to grieve all kinds of things in your life. Even just ideals and ideas of who and what and where and when and how. Things go wrong all the time, and you have to let go of your ideal of what you thought it was going to be, and that's an emotional process. And grieving the loss of a parent, a child, or a spouse, grieving that loss is not a quick 5-stage process that you just move and cycle through naturally. It is, it really changes the fabric of how you experience life, and trying to mitigate that while dealing with someone who feels like almost like you're living with the enemy at times. It feels like you're living with the unknown. You're living with someone who makes your fight or flight response. It engages your fight or flight response and they're a child, so they're in your home and they're your dependent, but you're trying to manage the most vulnerable feelings that you're going to have, and you have these feelings while living in a place where you have to be on guard all the time. It is very difficult, and people don't understand. I know, like, a lot of women who are going through a divorce, or actually, let me segue back to this. Like, I'm in a shitload of motherless daughter grief and coping groups on, like, Facebook and just different support forums and whatnot. And I've stayed in them this whole time because I do have the drive to discuss grief in a bigger way at some point in the future. And it keeps me in check with how normal my own experience with grief was, even though the world wants to, society wants to tell me that it was an extreme response, that I was, over the top. I was overly emotional. I was not managing myself well for way too long, that I had way surpassed the appropriate amount of grief time allotted by society. So it reminds me all the time that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, most likely. I mean, some of these groups have 100,000 people in them, of women that are becoming motherless every day or have been motherless for decades, and what those experiences look like for them. And it reminds me that, I mean, there are women, and I see this literally every single day. There are women that say, I'm here for advice because I don't even want to live anymore. I don't feel connected to my children. I don't feel connected to my husband since I lost my mom. And I don't even care if I live or die. That is not a rare thing to hear from someone who has recently lost their mother. So, and we talk about on this podcast and in these realms of discussion, we talk all the time about that connection between your biological mom. I know I harp on it pretty much every podcast, And, my experience with grief alone taught me so many things about reactive attachment disorder, just for one example. So, with that being said, women across the globe are suffering from these really desperate moments in their life, these really life altering experiences of loss and of tragedy, and they're doing so under the guise of being fine and that they're okay, because internally there's a battle, and there's a battle of, do I really want to let my guard down and be honest? Do I really want to continuously tell my husband or my partner how I'm feeling as far as my loss and my circumstantial emotional response to something? Do I really want to continue complaining and be transparent about this on top of the daily battle with trying to raise this child that has this attachment disorder, that's disconnected, that feels assaultive, that feels counterintuitive? Do I really want to continue complaining about this? And most of the time they don't. They want to just cry into a pillow when everybody's asleep, or they want to, just drown themselves in booze, or they want to hide in the bathroom, or they get so overly involved in their activities and their hobbies that they're, like, oh, we got 16 sports we're doing, and they just stay busy. It's almost like, it is a coping mechanism. It's like using drugs or using alcohol or sex or whatever to just manage yourself. And I have a system of thinking where I believe that you just do whatever the hell you have to do to get through some of these really difficult times. And not everybody comes out of that okay. That's the truth. Not everybody comes out of these moments without an addiction, without a divorce, without a loss of financial stability. Not everyone survives the same way they went into the scenario. A lot of times people are exposed to the truth, to the psychopathy and the sociopathy of these children when they are at their lowest, because they don't have their guard up yet. And during this time is when the first initial assault happens. Oh, this is a massive weakness in the system that has intimidated me thus far. All right, I'm going to exploit this now. And they just send it on that ass. They disrupt, and they disrupt every system that you've put in place that you thought was stable enough to get you through this moment. You thought you had everything intact, and then boom, all of a sudden there is just utter chaos, dumpster fire, madness happening in your house. And that's because they saw the opportunity, and they have really push that agenda forward, if that makes sense. I hope this is all making sense. I know it's rambly, but that's just my style. So hopefully that is followable, that you guys can track this as I'm rambling on. But I know I talk a lot about scenarios, and I mention these things that people may or may not be experiencing, but I don't always have a lot of solutions. It's more of just a validation. And I try actually in my life to mostly do that, because I've learned as a person that's always being sought after for my advice, that my solutions, they may be the only solution I know, but they're not always the best solution. And also, what I really and truly hate to tell you guys, if you didn't already know, there isn't really a solution for reactive attachment disorder behaviors. I mean, you're doing the best that you can. In most of these scenarios, you're showing love, or you have already decided to implement some kind of a structured, either your kid is in a facility like RTC, or you are implementing some kind of a power balance between you and your partner with the child and discipline and whatever else. Like, you're already doing the best you can. What I will tell you is this: if you don't have an awareness, and now you do, like if you didn't realize that your child was capable of capitalizing on and really like sending the pain while you're already in a lot of pain, and you're in a tragic situation, you're struggling, you're emotionally distraught, whatever. If you thought that your child was going to show any kind of compassion or empathy, and you're realizing now that they can't, or they haven't, or it doesn't feel genuine, understand two things. One, That child doesn't feel remorse. That child doesn't feel empathy in 90% of cases. Okay. That's something we know. We know that they don't naturally have an ability to feel empathy for other humans. They just don't. They don't have that empath quality. So anything that they're trying to do is either one of two things. There's an agenda, or they're trying to emulate what they see in the world as empathy. But it doesn't mean it's genuine, and that's okay. Like, I've talked to my kid about it. Like, that's okay. If you don't really feel it, which we've established she doesn't, and you want to feel bad. That's what she would always say. I want to feel those things. I want to feel sorry. I want to feel sad. I want to feel remorse. I want to feel compassion, whatever. And find a language or a way to communicate with this child that resonates with them. So like, we went through a bunch of scenarios where she would feel sorry and sad basically for herself, right? Okay, so you feel sorry for yourself, you feel sad for yourself, you are able to show yourself those emotions or have those emotions show up when you're in this position. If you can, how would you like for someone to respond if it were you? How would you want people to feel or behave towards you if you were feeling these things? And then try to show those types of courtesies, especially with acts of service. Like, even if you can't give words of affirmation, you can't show love in that way during this time, try to definitely explain or teach them not to make things more difficult, not to create more burdens, not to be difficult towards you or in the house, just, creating more chaos, but try to, give them examples of things they can do. If like, hey, if you see that, I'm standing in the kitchen with my back towards you and I'm getting emotional, I'm crying, do me a favor and just take the dogs on a walk. Don't ask me if I'm okay. Don't try to get my attention. Just hop into action and make sure they know that, you're going to have an awareness of it, even if you're not going to show them that you're aware of their efforts. Just say like, hey, I may not tell you thank you in that moment, or I may not acknowledge that you've done that, but that's what's going to mean the most to me. And I will give you credit for those efforts eventually. And now would be like a good time to even negotiate. If there is something that this kid wants, like maybe they don't have their PlayStation or they want their iPhone back or whatever it may be, now is the best time to be like, hey, if you can do these things and show this initiative for, here's an indication that you should go walk the dogs. If you see me and I put my hand up and I just say no, or if I say not right now, please go find something to do, or maybe there's no verbal indicator, whatever, tell them like, if you can do this for the next week and really give me my space and not get yourself in trouble, then you might get your phone back early. Or maybe it's something else that they really want, to go and stay the night with their best friend or do whatever. Use these moments. If you have no other resource, use your ability to have the foresight and the foreshadowing checked in, the capacity to like really zoom out and see what you need and how to get it. Because just like they manipulate us for what they need and how to get it, you can do the same thing. I mean, be willing to bend and to be flexible when you need something as well. A lot of times we draw these really hard lines for ourselves and we're like, I will suffer with you. We'll just suffer together to make sure this discipline moment happens. When if you don't have resources, you don't have anyone that could take the kids, maybe your partner's working working out of town or whatever the case may be, you need to check into your ability to self-preserve and care for you. Self-care, that's like such a trendy word or term. Like, have the capacity to take care of yourself, even if that's all you have for the day. Even if all you have for the day is, I need to grieve, I want to eat Ben and Jerry's and watch movies and cry in my bed all day, how can I achieve this? And I know if you have 2 and 3 year olds, like that's a whole different situation. But maybe if you have a couple dollars, hop online and have a babysitter come that's like, with one of the like the We Care app or whatever. Like maybe the neighborhood kid can come and just sit through an extra 2 hours after nap time, and you can have a 4-hour bath and watch a movie or something. Like, be creative for yourself as well. We are going through times that are deeply impactful on who we're going to be for the rest of our lives. And one day the season will come where you graduate parenting as a parent of dependence, and you're going to have children that are not in your house, and you're going to have a human being staring back at you that you don't know, that is broken and traumatized and is difficult to enjoy company with and is difficult to communicate with. If you let your experience, whether it's with adoptive children or foster children or whatever, stepchildren, if you let your experience in this life either put you on autopilot and make you asleep and unaware and not engaged in your own active existence, or if you become so angry and bitter and resentful that you can't even function within your own home, within your own traumas and milestones. So, during COVID-19, there are a lot of things that we can do right and a lot of things that we can do wrong. And the number one thing we can do wrong is, if you have been impacted, if you're going through something that is traumatic, which many of us or most of us are in some way, job loss or financial, demise, sickness, isolation from your parent that's in care, whatever it may be. If we don't check in with ourselves and really respond to our need to just sit with our own feelings, feel them, process them, and make the right actions, and take a compartmentalized, isolated break, whether that's in a bedroom, in your car, outside, whatever, from the chaos that is our parenting existence, then we're going to do damage to our psyche and our emotional wellness that we'll be dealing with long after we should be paying for it. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking of you guys. I really do. I worry about everyone. I love everyone. I appreciate all the comments and shares and messages and all the things, I am always thinking about and trying to figure out a way to improve my own engagement with this podcast, as well as the social media presence. So I'm always looking for your communications, and, I'm looking for you guys to give me guidance a lot of times. But these thoughts came to me today. I was very active out in the world today, and I haven't really been super active in the world. So I think this is my first time really driving at night. So I just pulled out of Lowe's with my lights off. Thank you for the person that flashed their lights at me. But being out in the world and seeing the sadness in people's faces and eavesdropping on conversations when you're standing in line, I hear the desperation in people's voice, and I heard, I heard the desperation in people's voice, and I just saw the desperation in their eyes at checkout, like the cashiers. I went to quite a few stores today that had to go to the bank. I had things I had to do, and I could just feel kind of that. It's like people are optimistic and they're out and about, but I can feel that weight and that burden of whatever, people are going through, and they're not actively wearing a sign that says I've lost my job and I can't afford groceries, So I feel very much intuitively aware of the struggles and the, just the desperate need to get a lot of things done with a limited amount of resources and, a lot of emotional baggage. It's a hard life for us. And there's a lot of parents out there that have, I think the word is neuronormative families. And they, this doesn't resonate. They have, if they lose a parent, AKA a grandparent of a child, then that child is going to have emotions connected to that loss. That child has emotions connected to their parents' loss. When you are going through these really intense emotional traumas and trying to grieve and trying to feel, your way through it, and you have a child at home that is waiting to pounce on any opportunity or weakness that you show when they don't actually feel any kind of genuine levels of remorse or empathy or compassion. They almost get off on seeing you struggle and hurt. It is really just an experience that you can't explain to other people, and it's an experience that is so isolating when you're in your own safe place that isn't safe. And people will doubt that that's even real. They don't even believe that that's your experience. Shit, let alone that they offer you any kind of any kind of resources to help you or help in general, like physically themselves helping you. They don't even believe you. They think that you're crazy, and it's just insult to injury when, you're like, you don't understand. Like, I can't cry in front of my kid. I don't want to talk about my mom that I just lost in front of my kid. Like, my kid is going to use those moments as weapons against me in my own journey with this. Like, I can't be sad at home. You don't understand. They're going to think that you're crazy and that you're way too hard on the kid and that you've really lost it now, So there are experiences as parents that are so singular, and I hope that for those families that are having strife in the home, where the child has triangulated the mom and the dad. We talked about triangulation on the last episode, but, the mom can't even, rely on the dad or whoever is, within the triangulated manipulation narrative. Like, there is no worse feeling. There's no deeper sense of desertion. You just feel deserted and you feel so alone, and the gaslighting. I mean, it's just so much. So you're not alone. Please find resources on Facebook groups for parenting support, step-parent support, foster care support. If you dig deep enough and you speak your mind enough in safe places, you will find that other doors open, very private niche support groups for things that are controversial will open for you. If you have questions, please reach out. I really think about you guys, and I hope everyone is doing the best considering the circumstances they have. And I'm also going to be working on a fund, like a charity type, what is the word I'm looking for here? Just a financial resource. Oh my gosh, excuse me. And I would like to donate the proceeds from the podcast, which are very minimal right now, and from social media and stuff. So I'm going to be working on that. I'm just kind of throwing it out into the ether so that it can, be out there and I can be accountable to it. But again, I really do want to help in any way that I can, which isn't much, but I definitely do have access to people and to facilities or people that have facilities all over the country, all over the world. So if you ever are in a really desperate place and you feel like you have nowhere else to go, send us a message on Facebook or Instagram at Reactive Attachments. You can always send us an email. I actually have a phone number now. Let me look at it because I don't know it by heart. Let's see. So that phone number is 719-315-0858. You can text that number if you're ever in like an emergency situation, you need help. I can't promise you that I will be able to answer, but or not answer, but give you the answer, but I will do my best. So you can always send us a text or call, leave a voicemail. You can leave a voice message on anchor.fm, Reactive Attachment Disorder podcast. There's a voice message portion, icon. You can leave us a voice message there, reactiveattachments@gmail.com. We are here. We are listening. So be well, guys, and remember self-care. your journey through sadness, grief, loss, mourning, it is real, and you do have the right to your feelings. So, all right, you guys, I'll talk to you soon, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We do have a YouTube now as well at Reactive Attachments. So, trying to be everywhere you are, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.